Meeting to order of the Polk County Board of Commissioners. Today is March 22nd. All commissioners are present and there are extra agendas on the back table. Do we have any comments for items not on the agenda today? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Also move.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 15th?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
Move.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you for that. We'll move on to the financial statement and audit delivery for the year ended 6/30/2022. That's correct, yeah. Please. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Brad Bingenheimer, partner with the accounting firm of Singer Lewack. And today I have with me.
I'm Kathy Wilson. I'm the Director of Assurance and Advisory for Oregon Governmental Group.
Hi, Kathy.
So Kathy was actually the one that kind of led the on-site team here for the county's audit this last year. You have the report in front of you. I just want to spend a few minutes kind of going over some highlights for you and then ask you if you have any questions at the end. So we have issued our report on the financial statements, which is what we consider to be an unmodified report. If you were to compare this report to prior years, it's a little bit longer and a little bit different format. But at the end of the day, it still says the same thing, which is, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position and results of operations for the county for the year ended June 30, 2022. So where did the county end up? So you ended up the year with total assets and deferred outflows of $121.9 million. You had total liabilities and deferred inflows of $80 million, which leaves a net position of $41.9 million. That is an increase of $8 million from the prior year. So you had a pretty good size increase in that. Part of that, of course, is all the funding that you're getting from all kinds of sources that you never expected before. And you had total revenues this last year of $75 million. In looking at the fund statements, which obviously, kind of what's most important is the general fund. Your general fund ended the year with a fund balance of $6.8 million, which is an increase of $732,000. So a little bit of an increase there in the general fund, and your governmental funds in the year with a fund balance of $25.9 million, which is an increase of $3 million. So increase in net position, increase in your fund balances. Both those are positive developments in your overall financial condition. Want to point a few things out in the footnotes. The first thing is, if you were to look at footnote number 5 on page 31, there's a new item there, a new item called leased assets. So during the year, the county implemented a new accounting standard that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board has bestowed upon us. And this is GASB 87. And what it does, it changes how you account for leases, both whether you're renting to somebody or you're renting from someone. So if you're renting from someone, which is the case we have here, you basically create an asset called a leased asset because you have the right to use this asset for the period of the lease. And so they said, well, you think about it, you have the right to it and you're paying something for it. So what they want us to do is capitalize that as an asset at basically the present value of the future lease payments. And that creates then this asset. And then you have also in note 6, a couple pages down further, you have a lease liability. So initially, you'll have a leased asset, lease liability, about the same dollar amount. The leased asset, you'll depreciate like other assets. The lease liability, as you make payments, you'll be paying down that liability, just like any other liability. So it is a new standard that was implemented. I know that was some challenges. I don't know if you want to talk
It's
about
very
that.
fun. Yeah. Just getting your arms around what they were going to require regarding disclosure and how they wanted presentation, and then the future payments, right? Getting the present value of those future payments. So a little bit of a challenge, but we had a good system in place, and we're able to. I think you guys were the guinea pigs, actually. So.
Then also on note 6, I always like to talk about the PERS net pension liability. And this year, you actually had a pretty good sized decrease in your net pension liability. So it started the year at $42.1 million and ended the year at $24.5 million, which is a $17.6 million decrease in your net pension liability. Now, the one thing to remember about this, Chris, this is beyond your control. You are reporting your proportionate share of the PERS net pension liability. And that's really made up of 2 elements. One is the total pension liability, which is, the actuary's calculation of the present value of future cash outflows for PERS. And then from that, they subtract the fair value of the investments of PERS for those benefits at a point in time, and the measurement date. So your measurement date that's reported in these financial statements was June 30, 2021. So it's important to remember that because they're reporting the fair value of the investments against that net pension liability. Your net pension liability, you have all these future cash outflows. They're calculating what the current value of those are. But what can fluctuate even more is that value of the assets. So their June 30, 2022 financial statements are out. And if you were to look at that, compared to the June 30, 21, the overall PERS net pension liability at 21 was $12 billion. And June 30, 2022, it's $15.3 billion. So we had the decrease this year. We'll have about a 28% increase next year would be my guess, right around there. So like I said, it's something we report. You don't have control of it, but it does, indicate, what's happening there in that overall larger PERS system that you participate in. So in addition to our report on the financial statements themselves, we issue 3 other reports. The first one is on our report under the requirements of the Oregon minimum standards. That requires us to look at essentially 2 things. One, your county's compliance with specific laws and regulations, and the very brief paragraph on internal controls. So in looking at those compliance with specific laws and regulations, we did note 2 things regarding budgeting that were in non-compliance. The first one was when you adopted the budget for the fair fund, you increased the amount of appropriations from what the budget committee had approved by greater than the Oregon law allows you to increase it by the greater of $5,000 or 10% of the original amount approved by the budget committee. You increased it by more than the 10% on the fair fund appropriations. And then in the fair fund, there's also a very tiny over expenditure of one of the items of $5,589. Very small, little over expenditure there. Nothing to get too worked up about, but those were our findings under the Oregon minimum standards. Then we also issue a report on the requirements of government auditing standards. This is kind of similar to the Oregon minimum standards, the fact that it talks about 2 things: compliance with laws and regulations and internal controls. This goes a little bit more into internal controls. It's part of every audit. We obtain an understanding of your internal controls and how they operate. And if we identify anything that we believe either is a material weakness or something that still warrants your attention, we'd be bringing those forward. We did not have anything that we need to bring forward to you as far as internal controls go. And then also we look at laws and regulations that could have an effect on the financial statements that we haven't already considered under the minimum standards. If we find anything there, we would comment on, and we did not note any instances of non-compliance with other laws and regulations. And then the final report we issue is under the requirements of the uniform guidance. That requires us to look at your compliance with specific federally funded programs. Okay, so this last year you had total expenditures of federal funds of $9.6 million. And of all that, we had to look at two programs. One of them was the Corona Relief Fund, and the second one was a related one, which is the coronavirus state and local physical recovery funds. Basically, both of those can be used for a lot of different things. We still have to go in and test if you complied with the requirements of that. And we did not note any instances of non-compliance. Kathy, you want to say anything about how the audit went and everything?
The audit was fantastic, actually. Caitlin and her staff were wonderful, provided us what we needed right away. And, you know, that makes our job easy. And it helps us get out of your hair quicker, too.
Good job, team. Any questions for our presenters?
No, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, Caitlin and Greg,
Yeah,
for all you do.
Good job, you too.
Thank Caitlin mostly.
That's why I started with her name.
Heavy emphasis on that one.
All right. Do we have a need for an executive session today?
No, sir, not for me.
All right. Anything for the good of the order? With that, we're adjourned at 9:12.